Nailed it! Hello, and welcome to another episode of Old Busted Hotness. So, as you can know, or for those of you that have been watching the video series, I started exactly a year ago on my son's birthday, whose car this is. And it is exactly a year later, and I'm not finished with the series, but we're coming along pretty good. So as you can see, I'm busy installing the header, and I got that new flange instead of a clamp for underneath, so I can take the exhaust off again and take the header off again without having to cut the pipe or worry about that clamp, that old school system. Kind of cool. It's a nice little system they've come up with so that we don't get any leaks, and yet it allows it to move around a little bit. So I'm just cutting the pipes, getting it all set up for the new flange, and we'll be welding it up pretty quick here.
GoPro, start recording.
Yeah, it was already recording. Get it all tacked into place, and then pull it all back out. Weld it up. You can see my perfect welds every time. Alright, my welds that are close enough. Now we move on to the intake. It's all nice and white and shiny. And there's always been one little bolt on this exhaust manifold that has given us problems. Here I am trying to reach for it. And now with the exhaust wrap on it, it's even worse. And at the old shop, we had already modified a tool, so I had to modify one of my new tools to really get in there. But it's that bolt way inside there. That header was not very well designed for ease of installation and removal. But I just needed to get another quarter turn of torque on it, and it's snugged up nice. Now this is the equalizer tube between the two carburetors. It also had a bunch of smog stuff on it originally, but we've cleaned that up and took all that stuff off. So now all I need it for is to create vacuum for the brake booster, but I'm not going to cut a hole in the middle of both of these gaskets, so it's not going to equalize the airflow in the carburetors anymore. It's just going to take one of the vacuums off for the brake booster, which doesn't take much, and then it'll keep the carburetors individual so I can tell if one of the carburetors isn't running right, because it'll kill 3 cylinders instead of sucking air across that tube from the other carburetor, getting all that lean mixture and all that going. So it's going to make it a little easier to tune, but it's going to be harder to make the car run smooth. There are the carburetors on. They went on nicely the first time, but I don't know how many of you installed SU carburetors, but can you tell what I've forgotten to do? And once you bolt the carburetors on, yeah. So you'll see in a minute, since I had to do it, since you're only watching in time lapse, I think I'm going to make you watch me tighten all the nuts up. Realize my mistake and pull one carburetor back off so that I can fit the carburetor linkage in, because you can't do it unless you have a carburetor off. So here comes the carburetor off. Linkage goes in, carburetor back on. Didn't take me too long. Now I put a new battery in it. The battery he had was too small, and that little nubby thing is always been too short, and it never has allowed me to really get a good grip on that battery. So I milled off a little bit of the shoulder to give it a little bit more thread depth, and that seemed to work. It tightened right into the battery, so I get a nice good connection. It's on the ground side. Cars always had problems, just like old Volkswagens. It's always had problems with the grounds. Grounds are always hard to trace out on these cars. Can give you weird problems with things. So now, after starting it up or trying to start it for a while, I started messing with the timing and realized that the timing is off 180 degrees. And it took me a good couple of hours to realize so that's what it sounds like when you're 180 degrees off, backfiring through the SUs. So I took the valve cover off, looked at number one, and found out I was 180 degrees off. That cap is supposed to be pointed down, not up. Or the rotor is supposed to be pointed down, not up. So I reversed all the wires just to test it real quick to see if my theory was correct, which made everything look like a mess, and tried to start it, in which it did start. Still ran bad, but I had a lot of adjustments to do. Of course, I'm checking the timing here. The last thing you want to do is run this thing with retarded timing when you're first firing it up. You can burn out a piston real quick, overheat it real quick. So first thing you do is make sure you get your timing right. I set it to about 8 to 10 degrees before top dead center, just to get it in a comfortable place. I can mess with that later too. So after many hours of trying to figure out why I was 180 degrees off, I was able to drop the oil pump out and redo the crank, the distributor timing rod, but it was in the right place. And then I remembered that many years ago we rebuilt the distributor. So I took the distributor apart, which I thought I had videoed, but I didn't. You can tell it's still not running right, but at least it's running and it's firing. Cat doesn't like it, of course, wondering what's that noise. So I took the distributor apart, and yes, you can put it together backwards. The mechanical advance in there allows the two shafts to spin at different timing because it tries to advance it mechanically according to your RPM, and you can put that on 180 degrees off. So I did that, corrected it, and now all my wiring is in the right spot, my firing order is in the right spot, even all the little timing things and everything are in the right spot. Next up, carburetors. Any of you that know the SU carburetors, it relies on the float bowl to adjust your richness and your idle in the carburetor. So I hang the little tubies off the side of the carburetor and adjust my floats so that they're just barely having fuel at the top of the hose when the hose is hung just at the right spot at the carburetor, which I'll show you here in a second. So both hoses, the fuel is right at the top of the hose there, and it's about halfway up the middle of that carburetor. So it's not quite all the way up to the throat of the carburetor. Now here, if you listen closely, you can hear the fuel pump. This car's had an electric fuel pump in it for a while. So we're off on our first drive. All right, there you have it. Happy birthday, JJ. Car's running good. This isn't the last video. I want to do a couple more things. Oh, on the next video, I'd like to get a wideband installed on it so we can see what the carburetors are running, and I'd like to put a cold air intake on it so that we're not getting all that heat when we're sitting in traffic. So until next time, thanks for watching. Hit the like button, subscribe. Bye.